hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Sound familiar? Well, the pursuit of happiness is so important that it was included in the Declaration of Independence. In today's market, there is a multitude of ways offered to attain happiness. Happiness has become to mean success and is seen as attainable if we just buy that right product, find the right house, automobile, or television. You know, people stand in lines for hours to purchase the latest and hottest new cell phones. We have been brainwashed from a young age that things will make us happy if we just find the right thing for us. Well, sadly, most folks spend a lifetime pursuing, chasing after happiness in all the wrong places. And their lives become empty shells of what their lives could have been. In my years on earth, I've found that the saddest people are the ones who appear to have everything. And this may sound strange, but the people who have sought happiness in material wealth can never seem to have enough to fill that void inside of them. The old saying of, "He who has the most toys wins," heard that one too, becomes a hollow victory. The energy used in building wealth on earth is seen in the end of life as futile. Because when all is said and done, you can't take it with you. Even those who seek power in pursuit of happiness on their deathbed find that death is more powerful. At the end of our days, we will each stand before the Lord God Almighty. And we will stand there without any of our material possessions. And we will stand there without any of our positions of power. And we will stand there without any of our pleasures that we attained on earth. We will stand there as we are. And all of those things that we had sought, those earthly things, none of that will matter. The only thing that will matter is how we chose to live our lives for Christ. If we are blessed with material wealth, we will be judged on how generous we were with what we had. And we will also be judged with what we did not share. So great is the judgment against those who do not use their wealth for the Lord, that we are warned in various scriptures throughout the Bible, both in the Old and the New, to not be deceived by the goods of this world, for they are fleeting. In today's reading from Ecclesiastes, King Solomon, who was known not only for his great wisdom, but for his great wealth at the end of his days, found only despair. Ecclesiastes is kind of like the lament of Solomon. See, Solomon had been given great favor by the Lord, but he had not heeded the Lord's warnings. God warned Solomon to not marry women who worshiped other gods, because they would tempt Solomon away from the Lord God Almighty. And although Solomon was known as the wisest man in the world, he made a terrible mistake, a very unwise mistake. He chose to disobey the Lord because he thought he knew better. In the first book of Kings, it is written of Solomon. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh. She was a prize in those days. Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the sons of Israel, you shall not associate with them, nor shall they associate with you, for they will surely turn your heart away with their gods. And Solomon held fast to these in love. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. King Solomon not only built palaces for his wives and concubines, he also built temples to their various gods. You don't hear about that so much, do we? We just hear about the temple of God that Solomon built for the Lord. But he also built temples for the idols that his wives and concubines and princesses worshipped. And by doing this, King Solomon polluted the promised land that God had given to the Israelites. And then Solomon even went and worshiped at these idolatrous temples to please his many women, thus invoking the anger of the Lord against him. No man had ever been as blessed by God before or since Solomon. Yet it was not enough for him. Instead of seeking happiness and serving the Lord and living in the Lord's will, Solomon sought happiness in earthly pleasures, earthly power, and materialism. He got caught up in all that he could do and have. And he used his wealth to honor the very idols that God hated and had the Israelites destroy when they came into the promised land. And because of Solomon's disobedience, his life ended in great despair and sadness. The Lord told him that his descendants would be cursed, and the great wealth he had attained in his lifetime would in his death go to his servant, except for one of the 12 tribes of Israel. God would only spare the tribe of Judah, not for Solomon's sake, but for Solomon's father, David, for his sake. And it is after hearing these words from the Lord that Solomon wrote on the futility of all that he owned and had enjoyed at the end of his days. In the reading we heard today from Ecclesiastes, if you notice, that was not a reading of a happy person. The wisest man in the world forgot that his wisdom came from God and not himself. And instead of seeking to please the very one who had granted him amazing favor, Solomon sought to please himself. And it is after a lifetime of using God's blessings to disobey the Lord that Solomon ends his days in great despair, because his earthly possessions now controlled his heart. Even after God's numerous warnings, King Solomon did not tear down the idolatrous temples, so they were still standing when he died. Nor did he break away from the very foreign women that God had forbidden him to have. Instead, the wisest man in the world died as an empty shell, having turned his eyes away from God, the giver of life. In today's gospel reading from Luke, Jesus tells a story about a rich man that had a successful harvest. And instead of thinking on how he could help others with his wealth, the man went to bed planning on how he could store up his harvest and use it for his own pleasure. The man's plans were to eat, drink, and be merry. But that did not happen, because that very night the man died. Jesus points out that God became angry with the man on account of his sin of greed and in not acknowledging where those blessings, where that successful harvest had come. And of God's judgment against the rich man, Jesus said, that's what happens when you fill your barn with self and not with God. Here in America, we pride ourselves in having the freedom to pursue what has become known as the American dream. We are raised up in it. The American dream is to work hard to attain earthly wealth and to have the earthly wealth to pursue whatever we desire to have, whatever it is, be it possessions, power, or pleasures. And what we have forgotten is the first part of that sentence in the Declaration, which states they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. All good things in this life come from the Lord God, our Creator. We truly, really don't own anything. If we did, we could take it with us. We're just borrowing it. We are all held accountable to God on how we use the blessings given to us from the Lord. Think of it as a test. So how much did you give away? That'll be the question asked. For in the end, it will not matter how rich we are with earthly treasures, but how rich we are with heavenly treasures that come from serving the Lord through our giving and sharing in God's blessings to us. In closing of earthly wealth from the Gospel of Mark, Jesus said, "For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his own soul?" May we choose to follow after Christ and store up for ourselves the true wealth, the wealth that lasts, the wealth that we can take with us. Then we will know true happiness, the happiness that comes from knowing and serving the Lord God Almighty.